Welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're really going to try to sharpen your perception and how to look at information, especially about major events, and really think critically.
Yeah, we're going to be taking a look at some articles, some online discussions, all sorts of things that are out there that really raise some questions about the official narratives.
Of some pretty high profile events.
Yeah.
We're talking
Big one.
Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, Sandy Hook, even January 6th.
And we want to be clear right off the bat, we're not saying everything in these sources is, gospel truth.
Right. But even if a fraction of it
Yeah.
is accurate, that's a problem. And
Right.
Be able to sort of develop.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
Because it means that we have to be really careful about what we accept as true.
Yeah. So let's start with Columbine because, it's kind of seared into all of our memories, right? As like a turning point in school shootings.
Sure. I mean, it really, changed a lot of the way we view security and safety.
Absolutely.
And, but some of the sources that we're looking at, suggest that maybe there's more to the story.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, there's a Reddit post that actually shows a moment in the aftermath. It looks like they're carrying a dummy.
A dummy.
Yeah, it looks like a dummy. And the suggestion is that perhaps there was an effort to kind of inflate the body count.
Wow. What kind of psychological impact does that have on the public?
I mean, huge, because then it makes you question the information.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's, obviously the basement tapes that the shooters made were sealed, right?
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah. So we don't really know what's on those, and there's a lot of speculation that perhaps there's information on those tapes that contradict the official narrative.
Yeah. Another layer of intrigue to this already.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot of strange things about Columbine.
Right. And then you've got like conflicting accounts, right? Some people say they saw more than 2 shooters.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of witness testimony that seems to conflict with the official story.
Right. And then, also the thing about their motives, there's like one theory that this was intended to be like part of a film.
Right, like a sort of echoing the violence in Natural Born Killers.
Yeah.
Which again, raises a lot of questions about what actually happened that day.
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to reconcile these different versions of events with, the emotional weight of it.
Yeah, and I think it highlights the challenge of questioning these narratives, especially with something like this that was so traumatic. It requires a real careful and a real commitment to truth seeking, even when it's uncomfortable.
Right. So let's shift gears for a second. Go to the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. This was in 2018, right? Officially, a gunman, motivated by anti-Semitism, opened fire, killed 11 people.
Yeah, horrible tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one of the sources that we're looking at is presenting this idea that this was a false flag event.
Now hold on a second. Let's define what do we mean by false flag for the listeners?
Sure. So a false flag is basically an event that is committed with the intention of disguising the actual source of responsibility.
Oh.
Okay. So you want to make it look like somebody else did it.
So in this case, they're saying it wasn't what it appeared to be.
Exactly.
They're pinning it on, or they're suggesting.
Well, they're suggesting, there's this individual, Alvin Berkun, I believe his name was, who was actually supposed to be at the service that day, but his wife was ill, and so he couldn't attend.
Okay.
And they connect this to his son, Jonathan Berkun, and they sort of theorize that there's a connection there to Israeli intelligence.
Okay.
And the claim is that Jonathan Berkun was actually involved with the FBI in a previous incident where a synagogue was bombed, but it was a fake bombing.
Oh wow!
So they're sort of suggesting this pattern of these orchestrated attacks.
That's a serious allegation.
Yeah.
We should emphasize that we're just
present.
This is what the source material is suggesting.
Right.
We're not endorsing any of this. We're just letting you know what's out there.
But it makes you wonder, how much can we trust these official narratives?
Right. Could there be something else?
Could there be an agenda at play here?
Yeah. And that's why we do this.
Right. this is why we're here.
We want you to develop.
We want you to be able to be discerning.
Yeah, that sniff test.
Yeah.
So that you can be more perceptive about information.
Because if something doesn't feel right, if the official story has some holes in it, it's up to us to dig a little deeper.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about Sandy Hook. I mean, another just incredibly tragic, horrible, horrible event. You know, our sources, while acknowledging how devastating it was, are raising a lot of questions.
Yeah, lots of what they call unanswered questions that suggest that maybe there's more to the story. You know, and one of the examples that they give is this idea that Facebook pages for a victim and a charity drive.
Oh wow!
Right. So if that's true, I mean that's a huge discrepancy.
Yeah.
That raises some serious doubts about the
narrative. And you know, another thing they point to is the lack of.
It's a really tough question. Because grief manifests in different ways for different people.
Absolutely. And we have to acknowledge that's from people who are very passionately defending the official narrative.
Right.
You know, like this one commenter, Fence Sitter 82, is just, going point by point, giving counter arguments.
And it just goes to show you, we really have to use our
critical thinking skills.
Yeah, there's different accounts, there's emotional responses, there's all these unanswered questions.
It's not about, blindly accepting one side or the other.
Yeah.
It's information.
Yeah.
Really look at perspectives and then make up your own mind. Yeah, and that's what we're encouraging here, to not just accept what you're being told, but to develop the skills to actually analyze this stuff.
Right. And again, I think the scary part is that if even a small detail in some of these alternative narratives has any weight to it, that means that we need to be more aware, more discerning, more skeptical.
Yeah, especially when it comes from, official sources.
Especially when it comes from the people that we're told to trust. It's really interesting, isn't it? When you start looking at these alternative narratives, it really highlights the psychology of how we process information.
Yeah. Like even if all the facts are right there in front of us, our own filters can really distort how we see things.
Absolutely. And I think, the people who seek to control narratives exploit our desire for simple explanations, our fear of the unknown.
Right.
And they use that to shape how we see things.
So they're playing on our emotions.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the most common tactics is repetition. Right? We are to believe it, even if it's not true.
Right.
And this is especially true, when it's repeated across multiple sources, right? You see it on the news, you see it on social media.
Right.
You might even see it, referenced in entertainment.
It's like a constant drumbeat, and it just wears you down.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then there's emotional appeals, right? If you can trigger strong emotions, fear, anger, outrage,
right.
You can actually bypass people's, rational thinking.
Oh yeah, I mean, we see that all the time, right? Headlines that are designed to
absolutely
shock you, get you angry.
Yeah, images that are chosen specifically. For an emotional response.
Right, and then there's the use of authority figures.
Right, we're conditioned to trust people in positions of power, whether it's government officials, scientists, experts, celebrities, and when they endorse a particular narrative, it lends an air of credibility,
right?
Whether it's deserved or not,
which makes it even harder to question,
right?
Because then you feel like you're going up against the people you're supposed to.
That's right. And then, of course, there's the tactic of demonizing anyone who questions the official narrative.
Oh, right.
Right. So you portray them as crazy, as dangerous,
conspiracy theorists,
right? As unpatriotic, and what that does is it discourages dissent. It creates this climate of fear around even speaking out.
So it's a way to silence any opposition.
That's right.
Make people voice their doubts.
Exactly. And all of these things work together to create what's called an echo chamber, right? Where people only encounter information that reinforces what they already believe. And any opposing voices are just shut out.
It's kind of a disturbing picture.
It is.
How do we break free?
Well, I think it starts with developing what's called media literacy, right? Which is basically the ability to critically evaluate information,
Okay.
to question the motives of those who are presenting it, and to be aware of our own biases.
So it's about being like an active consumer of information,
Absolutely.
not just passively absorbing everything that comes our way.
Exactly. And I think a big part of that is diversifying your information sources.
Okay.
Don't rely on just a couple of mainstream outlets. Seek out alternative perspectives, independent media,
Right.
even citizen journalism.
Get outside of our comfort zone a little bit.
Absolutely. Expose yourself to a wider range of viewpoints. And this is perhaps most important. Be willing to have uncomfortable conversations.
Okay.
Engage with people who hold different beliefs. Listen with an open mind.
Right.
And challenge your own assumptions.
Because if we only talk to people who already agree with us,
That's right.
then we're not really learning anything.
We're just reinforcing our existing biases.
Yeah.
And so it's through that respectful dialogue and that willingness to consider different perspectives that we can actually start to break down those echo chambers and build a more informed and discerning society.
I like that. A more informed and discerning society.
That's where we're aiming for.
Yeah. But it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's empowering.
Yeah.
Because when we start to think for ourselves, when we start to critically evaluate the information that we're given, we actually take back control of our own beliefs and our own understanding of the world.
So it's not about like rejecting everything that we're told.
Right.
It's about approaching it with
a healthy skepticism and a willingness to dig a little deeper.
Exactly.
We become active participants in understanding the world, not just passive recipients of someone else's narrative.
Which brings us back to the events that we've been discussing: Columbine, Sandy Hook, the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, the Capitol riot. What do we hope listeners will take away from looking at these different viewpoints?
Well, I think the main takeaway is this: if even a fraction of what these sources suggest is true, then we need to be far more vigilant about the information that we consume and the narratives that we accept.
Because the implications are huge.
They are.
If there are powerful entities out there that are manipulating events and manipulating information for their own agendas, then our very understanding of reality is kind of at stake.
It is, and it really underscores the of critical thinking, of questioning a narrative by focusing on these seemingly anomalous details.
It can be very effective.
It can, especially if those details tap into people's existing biases or beliefs.
Right. So we have to be careful about that.
Absolutely.
Not just accepting these narratives because they challenge the mainstream.
Exactly.
Actually scrutinizing them just as rigorously as we would any other source of information.
Exactly. Look at the evidence, consider their motives, and then make an informed judgment based on all the available information.
And one thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that truth is often complex and messy.
That's right.
Rarely black and white.
Absolutely. And that's one of the challenges of navigating these alternative narratives, right? Because they often offer these very simple explanations for events that are actually very nuanced and complicated.
Yeah. And it's tempting, right?
It is.
In a world that feels so chaotic and confusing.
Absolutely.
To want that simple explanation.
It's comforting.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that simple doesn't always equal accurate. So embrace the complexity. Be willing to wrestle with ambiguity. And understand that there may not be a neat and tidy answer for everything.
And being okay with not knowing.
Absolutely.
That uncertainty is actually a key part of developing that critical mindset.
I agree.
which can be a little unsettling.
It can.
But it's also kind of liberating.
It is because it frees us from clinging to these rigid beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows us to approach the world with curiosity and wonder.
Instead of fearing the unknown, we can kind of embrace it
Absolutely,
as an opportunity.
that's right. And I think that's a powerful antidote to the manipulation that we've been discussing.
So it's not about being cynical or distrustful.
Right.
It's about developing that discerning
mind.
and that critical approach.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming our agency as individuals, taking ownership of our beliefs, and becoming active participants in seeking truth.
Absolutely. Which is a worthy pursuit.
It is a worthy pursuit.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of this deep dive into questioning narratives, and we've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have.
From school shootings to the Capitol riot, and it's been pretty intense.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in for sure.
So for this last part, I want to get practical.
Yeah.
What can our listeners do right now, to become more aware?
Yeah. How do we actually put this into practice?
Yeah, because it's easy to say, like, question everything, but you actually do that in a world where
in this ocean of information,
it's overwhelming.
Right. So I think it starts with recognizing that we all have biases. Right. We all have these preconceived notions that color how we interpret the world. So the first step is simply acknowledging those, becoming aware of what those biases might be.
So it's like, looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I can lean this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be extra careful about information that supports that view.
Exactly. And once you've identified what those biases are, you can start to actively seek out information that challenges them, right?
Okay.
So read articles from sources that you typically disagree with. Listen to podcasts, watch documentaries, whatever it is that offer different perspectives.
Get out of our comfort zones a little.
Exactly. Make yourself a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When you're evaluating information, especially about a major event, think about the source. Who is presenting this information? What's their track record? Do they have a known agenda?
So it's like checking the credentials of an expert before you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Before you take their advice.
And look for evidence, right? Don't just accept assertions. Are they backing up their claims with verifiable facts, with data, with primary sources, or are they relying on hearsay or anonymous sources or emotional appeals?
Just because it's a good story,
right,
doesn't mean it's true.
Exactly. And pay close attention to the language being used, right? Are there inflammatory terms or loaded language or generalizations?
Yeah.
Are they trying to trigger?
Words can be so powerful, right?
They are incredibly powerful.
You don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And they can sway you.
Absolutely. One thing I always emphasize is be wary of simple explanations for complex events, right? The world is a complicated place. And truth is often nuanced. And so if someone is offering a narrative that seems too neat and tidy, too good to be true, it probably is. It's probably worth digging a little deeper.
Yeah. It's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. And finally, don't be afraid to question authority. Whether it's a government official, a news outlet, even an expert in a field.
Yeah.
Everyone has biases.
Right.
Everyone has potential agendas.
Right.
So be respectful, but be skeptical.
Yeah.
Don't just accept anyone's word as absolute truth.
Yeah, you have the power to think for yourself.
They do.
You have the power to evaluate this information.
You do.
And reach your own conclusions.
That's right. It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
It's also empowering.
It is empowering.
Because the more aware we become of how information can be manipulated, the less susceptible we are to it.
You become more resilient.
Absolutely. More able to navigate this complex world with clarity and discernment.
And that's the point of this whole deep dive, right?
That's right.
Is to give you the tools to be more perceptive.
To be more critically engaged citizens.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, what's the most important message you want folks to take away?
Just to remember that the world is full of these competing narratives, all vying for your attention.
That's right.
And don't just passively consume them.
Right.
Engage with them. Question them. seek out multiple perspectives, develop your own sniff test,
Absolutely.
and trust your own ability to think critically.
Trust yourself.
Yeah, and figure out what's true and what's not.
That's right. That's the key.
So, with that, that's the end of our deep dive.
Another one down.
Thanks for joining us, and keep those minds sharp.
Okay, so